What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, let's move on to our next segment in our mailbag. Hey, Jason, Wemby question. I've been watching your show for a few years now. Top 0.1% of Spotify listeners, by the way. Huge fan. Thanks for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. And I've heard that you say the primary goal of rebuilding a franchise is to go get a superstar. By all metrics, it looks like Wemby is that guy. If you were the GM of the Spurs, what would you do next? Who are you keeping? Who are you letting go? What kinds of player archetypes are you looking to bring in through trades/drafts? And then thank you so much for your work. It has helped me understand and enjoy basketball so much more than before. Again, I sincerely appreciate the kind words and for supporting. So the initial structure is what I want to look at here. So if we agree that Victor Wembanyama is our superstar to kind of anchor everything with San Antonio, now we look at like the ideal kind of 5-man lineup, right? Now for me, right next to Victor Wembanyama at that forward spot, I'm looking for a big, strong forward that can help in defensive rebounding situations and in low man situations, kind of like we were talking about in the Suns earlier, that guy that steps over in ball screen situations when Victor Wembanyama has to come up to the level of the screen, right? At the 3 spot, we're looking for a guy who could defend on the perimeter, knock down threes, and attack closeouts really well. At the 2 spot, I'm primarily looking for, in the 2-1, depending on who you end up building around. If it ends up being Devin Vassell at the 2 ends up being your skill guard, right? Like he's the guy that is going to have the ball in his hands a lot, be running a lot of pick and roll. I really need the point guard in that case to be an outstanding perimeter defender, a guy who can navigate screens well, guard the other team's best guard, so on and so forth. Now, with Devin Vassell being a skill guard, I do think that from the forward position, one of those 2 forwards, whether it's the 3 or the 4, needs to be a really high level offensive player. I do think that's something that they'll need in the long run. What makes this complicated is you look at the payroll. Devin Vassell is locked up on a pretty affordable deal, especially when you factor in how the salary cap could change over the next TV deal. Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins are your main larger contracts. They're in the high teens. But most of the young guys are on rookie deals. So like with those guys, you're not going to be dumping them for salary. You might include them in a star trade if you're looking to bring somebody back, but there's no reason that like they don't really make up much of a factor in your payroll situation, right? But we also have to acknowledge the reality of Wemby's development arc. He is so good, so fast. There's like a better than 50% chance, in my opinion, that he's going to be a top 10 player in the league next year. And it's on the table that he could be a top 5 player in the league next year. That's how freaking good Victor Wembanyama is. And we're talking about another 6-7 months or longer of development before we get to that point. So like that you can't be Oklahoma City and do a 5-year slow burn of a rebuild. You can't take this slow. There's a certain urgency element here based on the reality of Victor Wembanyama's development. So from there, I would look at, as far as the young guys go, none of them would be safe for me except for Devin Vassell and Victor Wembanyama. And I would trade Devin Vassell if it brought back a superstar shot creator. But like the other guys, like I like Jeremy Sohan, not enough to view him as untouchable. Like Trae Jones, not enough to view him as untouchable. I've never been a big Keldon Johnson fan. I think he's a little tunnel vision and not a good enough shooter. So like from there, it really is about who becomes available in the offseason. I really do think they need to make some type of all-in move for an all-star in their prime sooner than later, sometime in the next 2 years. Trae Young is an interesting option, but he's a very risky option. He's a guy that I think unlocks a lot offensively right away, but he's going to be expensive to get. And then 2, there's a question. There's a case to be made that it's cashing in too early and for not a good enough player. And so the Trae Young thing, I'm kind of more leaning towards I would hold back if I was San Antonio. But that is an interesting option, and I do like the offensive fit with Victor Wembanyama. From there, I'd be looking for a forward, someone that can work in that 3-4 spot who is a much higher level offensive player than what you've had in over the course of this season. A guy like Lauri Markkanen is a guy I'd look at. A guy like Brandon Ingram. Like, what if the Pels flame out and they decide that, Zion is the guy they want to build around, and the guy that they need to cash in is someone like a Brandon Ingram? That's a guy that I'd be looking at. Mikal Bridges, I know Brooklyn loves him and views him as a foundational piece, but that's completely irrational given where they're at in terms of talent on that roster and Mikal Bridges' age and where he's at in his development and the fact that he's kind of close to his ceiling. Mikal Bridges is a guy that I'd be looking at. But again, if you, in terms of the actual structure of the roster, 2 forwards there. One of them needs to be a scorer of some kind, a high-level offensive player. The 3 needs to be able to navigate on the perimeter defensively. The 4 needs to be bigger and stronger, especially since Victor's a little bit on the skinny side. And then at those guards, one of your guards needs to be a high-level skill guard, and then the other one needs to be some kind of bulldog, like point-of-attack defender that can navigate screens. That would be the structure that I go with from there. But I do think that they need to make some sort of all-in move sooner than later just because of Victor Wembanyama's development. All right, before we get out of here, the Julius Randle injury. So it turns out that he tried to rehab the shoulder and it just isn't going to come around. And so he's getting surgery and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. What does that mean for the Knicks? Here's the thing. Theoretically, if OG Anunoby can come back and get the elbow inflammation under control, I do think he can slide into that 4 spot. And Isaiah Hartenstein is playing so incredibly well. And Mitchell Robinson is back into the equation in a way that he wasn't earlier in the season, right? So, like, the Knicks are still formidable. But the reality is they need a consistent shot creator beyond Jalen Brunson. We saw it last year when Julius Randle was available. And he just wasn't quite good enough because he was out of rhythm and playing on a bum ankle. We saw that wasn't enough. And so it's a lot of pressure on OG Anunoby to kind of be that matchup attacking forward to create shots. And so I had really high aspirations for the Knicks, and I still do in the long run. And I'm really curious to see what they do this summer to kind of bring in that legitimate secondary shot creator next to Jalen Brunson, whether that's just Julius Randle getting healthy or it's some sort of trade or free agent acquisition. But I'm interested to see what they do in the long run. But I just don't know that they can get through that gauntlet at the top of the Eastern Conference without having a bona fide secondary shot creator. And so I kind of view that Julius Randle injury as a bit of a death sentence. That said, again, I think the way you kind of structure this in the short term is when OG Anunoby comes back, you play him at the 4 and essentially ask him to do a lot of what Julius Randle does, targeting smaller guards and screening actions to get switches and to do that bully ball post-up attack, just to have an option to spell Jalen Brunson as much as you can. New York is still going to be a pain in the ass. Again, Julius Randle wasn't even very good last year, and they were a few shots away from being in a good position to make it to the conference finals. So I still believe in the Knicks as a kind of a pain in the ass type of threat. But firepower is just going to eventually be an issue for them. There's just too many teams around the league that have more shot creation than the Knicks do. And so the Julius Randle injury is more or less a death sentence at this point, unfortunately. It's been a fun Knicks season. They've competed through it all, and they have such a bright future, and they have so much talent on the roster. But it's just their only hope relied on Julius Randle coming back this year and being a reliable secondary shot creator. All right, guys, that is all we have for this morning. As of right now, we're planning on going live tonight on YouTube after the final buzzer of Nuggets Clippers, unless a bunch of superstars end up not playing. So we'll see how the injury report comes out. But I hope you guys have been enjoying these film sessions. I'm excited to keep building them out in the long run. I appreciate you guys' support, and I will see you next time.